What happens when a man with a heart attack finds himself thrown out of his family, his job, and his life at a time when he needs support the most? He is left alone, but what he does next leaves even his ex-wife speechless. I thought strong coffee and routines could keep life in balance. Big mistake. Turns out you can be reliable, predictable, and kind ad nauseum your whole life, and still end up not being the person you signed up for. That morning I got up at 6:40 as usual. Yes, I'm the kind of person who doesn't set 5 alarm clocks. One phone call and I'm up. Coffee, laptop, server analytics. I had plans. Turn in a security report for our Austin branch, go to the doctor, my heart had been acting up the last few days, and make it to the parent-teacher conference at school. I still believed I could be a good father, a responsible employee, and maybe even a decent husband. It's funny, isn't it? Jessica, my wife, the same one I'd lived with for 8 years and who I damn well considered a reliable rear guard, came downstairs about 15 minutes later, in a terry cloth robe, with a look on her face like a passenger who'd gotten on the wrong flight and was suddenly in economy. She glanced at me briefly, nodded and muttered, "You're early. We have to make it before 9 o'clock. Texas is already awake." I replied and sipped my coffee. She didn't kiss me like she used to. Didn't ask how I was feeling. No, good morning or good luck, honey. Just walked past me like I was an umbrella stand. I could, of course, chalk it up to hormones, fatigue, Mercury retrograde after all. But the truth is, it was systemic. A quiet burnout that I didn't notice, or didn't want to. The next item was a visit to the doctor. I made an appointment for an EKG. The doctor, a man in his 50s with a face like a man who has already seen everything, including the end of the world, looked at the cardiogram, then at me. A pause, a doctor's pause in which you already know there will be no jokes. "You've already had a heart attack. Clearly not yesterday," he said. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your blood clot traveled down a branch. You were lucky, very lucky. You made it here, which means your body hasn't given up yet, but you need to go to the hospital." Now I walked out into the hallway, a little wobbly, like I was walking on thin ice. First thing I'd do was call my wife, to tell her what happened, that I was going to the hospital, that I needed to pick up my son from school. A common request in a family where there is something human. "I can't. I have yoga and a meeting with my mom. Why don't you do it on your own?" Her voice was flat, like I was asking to buy eggs on the way home. "I just got out of rehab. I had a heart attack. I'm on my way to the hospital. I can't pick up Alex." "Got it. I'll ask my mom." And that's it. No hang in there. No, I'll be there. Just beeps. I got to the hospital on my own, in a cab, in jeans and a t-shirt, because I didn't have time to pack a bag. In the ward for two, there was only me, and a drip in which saline dripped at a rate as if someone was counting the minutes of my helplessness. 3 days. In 3 days, not a single door opened, not Jessica, not her mother, not a phone call, just a text from her son. "Mom said you're in the hospital. How long are you going to be there?" By the fourth day, I could walk, a little wobbly, but I was breathing. And that's when she came. Not with flowers, not with a warm blanket, with a phone in her hand and a "let's get this over with quickly" look on her face. "You look better than I expected. I thought you weren't coming. We need to talk." Of course we do. Those words never mean anything good. In my case, they meant the final shot. "I didn't sign up for this, Michael. The hospitals, the doctors, the stress. I'm 36. I don't want to be a nurse. I need to live. This is temporary. I just need to recover. And I just need to leave. I took Alex. We'll be at my mom's," and she left. No tantrums, no screaming, no last look. It was like closing a browser tab. And I stayed, with a catheter in my vein, in a room that smelled of chlorine and loneliness. After I was discharged, I went home. If you could even call it home after she left. The only things left in the refrigerator were a bottle of ketchup and a jar of pickles. Quite symbolic. In the bedroom, no bedding or pillows. The mirror had been taken off the wall. She even took the coffee machine. Took everything but the bills. There was a piece of paper on the kitchen table. Not a letter, not an explanation, just a list. My stuff. Taken. Alexa is with me. Money is at my mom's. Keys. Leave them in the drawer. Heck, even saying goodbye looked like a washing machine manual. I sat on the edge of the couch. I wanted to turn on the TV. The remote didn't work. I sat in silence. My heart was pounding, not from illness, but from a premonition that everything was just beginning. He called the bank and the joint account was zeroed out. She'd withdrawn it the day before, with a power of attorney I gave her a couple years ago. At the time, it seemed like a show of trust. Now it's suicide. My son hasn't been in touch. I wrote him, called him, nothing. On the third day, I got a text message. Dad, Mom said you're sick, and I can't worry. It wasn't an answer. It was a filter. My own child had become unreachable, as if I had put him in power save mode. I came to work a week later, not because I had recovered, because I could no longer sit in the void. My desk was still there, but the monitor screen already belonged to someone else. A new person, a new nameplate. My things were in a box. Michael, hi. The assistant jumped up. You're on medical leave, right? Not anymore. You didn't know? Of course I didn't know. Who reports something like that in person anymore? I went to HR. There was a woman with glasses and a face that had seen this kind of scene before. We have cut the CTO position due to restructuring, but we can offer remote consulting. Hourly rate. This is for a job I've spent 8 years building? That's why you're the best candidate. No one knows the system better than you. There you go. From partner to freelancer. From father to observer, husband to ex-husband, all in 2 weeks. That evening, I was back in the same apartment, but with a box from work and no illusions. It was a moment when even the refrigerator seemed judgmental. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like waking up. A day later, I received a summons, not from the court, from her lawyer. Petition for temporary restraint of visitation based on father's unstable medical condition. Wait a second. Unstable condition? A heart attack is a personality trait now? I called her, not to complain, but to hope. She answered coldly. You don't understand. Alex is afraid. He's not ready to see you weak. You're the one who's afraid, not him. You're in no position to judge. You have emotions. I have facts. I hung it. No hysterics. No screaming. Still the same cold. Still the same pause, like in the ward. And still the same residue, like cheap mint paste. I hired a lawyer. A woman, tough, collected, with eyes that seemed to strip anyone down to the truth. She listened in silence. Then she asked me one question. Are you ready to go all the way? I nodded. Then we'll start with the medical exam and the countersuit. All this time I've been sleeping lightly, eating out of containers, watching the clock, which was slow. Then one night, in the middle of the night, I realized that everything I thought was life was gone. All that was left was me, my pulse, and the desire to prove that I couldn't be written off. I got up, not quickly, not spectacularly, but with a clear intention. No one else would decide for me who I was or what I was capable of, even if that person was someone I'd once shared a bed and dreams with. This was my first chapter of a new book, written with blood, coffee, and an IV, but written by me. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolded. If chapter 1 was like a blow under the breath, then chapter 2 is when you're lying on the floor and you're being passed by without being noticed. The discharge from the hospital was symbolic in its own way. No flowers, no car, no wife. But there was a bill for treatment and a plastic bag with medicines for 3 months in advance. A very inspiring start to a new life, huh? I walked out of the hospital and caught a cab. The driver didn't even ask how I was feeling, just turned on the meter. Because why ask a man with a Band-Aid on his neck and eyes like a fish that forgot to change its water? There was nothing waiting for me at home. I mean, literally, even the couch was out of place. She took everything. The bed, the dishes, the books. Even the chair I used to read to Alex at bedtime was gone. All that was left was an old mug labeled Best Dad Ever and an empty refrigerator where someone had left soy sauce in it, for some reason, perhaps his irony. I went into the bedroom. There was an envelope on the windowsill. Inside were photocopies, a divorce petition, a tentative property division agreement, and a list of things she'd taken. It was beautiful, all mature, except no explanation, no words. It was like I was an expired tenant. The next few days were gray. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't leave the house, eating whatever I could order without words. Stared at the ceiling and waited to hear the door, and everything would turn out to be a dream. But the door was silent, like the rest of the world. On the fifth day, I got a call from HR. Michael, good afternoon. We hope you're recovering. We were wondering when you might be able to come back. We just had an audit and we've reassigned some duties. Right now, your department is being temporarily outsourced. You fired me? Not exactly. We've reclassified you as an independent consultant. It gives you more flexibility and less stress. With a pay cut, with an adjustment in terms, temporary, and just like that, no meetings, no thanks. 8 years of seniority burned into an email. I became an independent consultant on a project I'd built from scratch. That is, I could occasionally give advice to those who were now in my position, if, of course, I was asked. I hung up the phone and realized I didn't know which was worse, my wife cheating on me or betraying the company. Both had done it in the same cold blood. No hysteria, no drama. They just cleaned the place up. I decided to see my son. I called Jessica. I need to pick up Alex for the weekend. Can't make it. He's got class. Then he's got homework. He's tired. I'm his father. I have a right. Talk to my lawyer. Briefly, no foreplay, no dialogue. A week later, a letter came from the bank. A notice of mortgage delinquency. I looked at the numbers confusedly. For the last 2 months, the payments hadn't gone through. Why? I'd left money in the account. Then I realized I'd left it there, but it was shared. She took everything. Every penny. She didn't just leave. She cut off my air. I went to the bank. I sat across from the counselor. He looked at the monitor and said, "Your spouse was acting under a power of attorney. There's nothing we can do." I stood up silently, because if I'd stayed, I would have smashed the table. Not because I was angry, because I was tired of being in the frame. My existence had been turned into a file that could be deleted. I came home. There was a message from the school on my answering machine. The teacher wanted to know if I was coming to the matinee. Alex has a solo, first time. I went. I bought flowers, wore a clean shirt, sat in the auditorium. My heart was beating like it was out of rhythm again. He went on stage. Little, brave, my son, and he kept looking somewhere in the audience. Not at me. And then, in the middle of the show, he froze. Pause. His lips quivered. He saw me, and he looked away, quickly, like he'd done something wrong. I walked out of the auditorium in the middle of the applause. Not because it hurt, it was because I realized I'd been eliminated. Quietly, without blood, like an unnecessary section of a document. It wasn't the end. It was the point of no return. The next day, I went to the lawyer's office. The same office where Jessica and I had once arranged a joint mortgage now greeted me with a different, judgmental, light. The counselor, a woman in her 40s with an icy expression, flipped through the paperwork and nodded. Your spouse has filed a petition for temporary disposition of the property, citing your physical and emotional instability. She's also asking to limit your right to make decisions regarding the child. Is that legal? Preliminarily, yes, but we can countersue. You'd have to undergo a medical evaluation and a psychological evaluation. I'm sick, but I'm not crazy. I'm not accusing you. I'm just describing the battlefield. A battlefield. That's exactly what it felt like. I walked out of the office and realized the air felt different. Not cold, heavy, like the city no longer belonged to me. I started gathering files, the tests, statements, loan payments, anything that proved I was still in the running. Not because I wanted to change anyone's mind, it was because I wanted to believe it myself. I called my son. A day later, 2 days later, he didn't answer. One time he hung up. Another time he said he was busy. Then silence. Total silence. I drove to the school. I waited at the gate. He came out with a backpack. I called out. He stopped. He took a look, and he walked on, like he didn't recognize me, or pretended to, and I couldn't scream. Not because I gave up. It was because I didn't want to embarrass him. Too much had already been broken for him. I went home and turned off the light. I just sat there, in the dark, no phone, no sounds, just a pulse, clear, even, because at least something in me was still working right. I went to the gym that morning, not for form, for routine, rhythm, some rhythm. I signed up for therapy for the first time in my life and said to myself, if they've decided I'm everything, then it's time to show them what everything looks like when it comes back. I can't be crossed out. I am not a draft. A couple days later, I got an invitation to a medical exam. In the office sat a doctor with a face like a man who has seen too many complaints to believe any of them. He flipped through my papers, nodded, and said, "You are functional, but be careful. A recurrence could be fatal." "You have no idea, doctor," I replied, "how careful I am now." After him, the psychologist. What a meeting. A woman with a notebook and a voice like an answering machine, asking questions you don't answer honestly if you want to appear sane. Do you often feel lonely? I live with a refrigerator that echoes. Guess. Are there times when you lose meaning in your life? Lose it? Number. It was stolen, and no one's given it back yet. Do you feel guilty about your son? Every damn day. She was making notes. I watched her move her pen, fast, sure, and suddenly I realized for the first time in ages, I was talking out loud. Not silent, not swallowing. I was speaking, and that made me feel better. A week later, the report came back. The psychologist declared me stable. The doctor declared me able-bodied. And that's when I realized the system was waiting for me to fail, that I would break, that I'd give up. I didn't give up. I went to the lawyer with papers in my hand. Allison looked at me and said, "Now we have everything we need to fight off the right to see our son. We're filing. Right now." I signed it, and in that moment, I didn't feel like a victim. I was the prosecution. I came home that evening. I brewed some coffee. I opened my laptop, and I wrote my son a letter. No complaints, no recriminations, just one. I'm here for you. Always, even if they don't let me be there officially. I didn't know if he'd respond, but it was the first step back, not to my former life, but to myself. The next day, I woke up without an alarm clock, not because I'd slept well. It was because something inside me clicked. I didn't feel like a winner, but I didn't feel like a loser either. I was on the field, alive, with papers, with pain, with clarity, and with one simple goal, to reclaim what I still could. And if someone once said, "I didn't sign up for this," now it was me. I didn't sign up to be betrayed, to be eliminated, to be a statistic. But if it was slipped to me, I would turn it into a script where I would write the ending myself. Sometimes you don't need a new day to start over. You need a new perspective. And I've finally got that look. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see the hero put everyone in their place. Judgment Day has arrived. Literally. Since morning, the sky over the city had hung a gray blanket, as if the universe itself had decided to play into the mood. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. Not because I wanted to impress. It was because it was a battle. And in a fight, you go in dressed to fight. I wasn't angry, nor was I calm. I was ready. I was ready to show you that not everyone who gets thrown out disappears. There are some who come back, not with a plea, with an argument. The courtroom smelled of vending machine coffee and other people's fates. The courtroom was empty, closed session. My attorney Allison was waiting, as always, with a folder that basically contained my whole new life. Dry sheets, certificates, copies of correspondence. All the things that were supposed to prove, I'm not the problem, I'm a father. Jessica walked into the room with the same look on her face as the first time we got divorced. Only then we were making jokes about lawyers and movies, and now we were the scene ourselves. Next to her was the lawyer. Young, confident, with a laptop and a look like I'm an article in the criminal code. The judge, an older woman, with a way of speaking as if every word claimed to be a quote. began with the formalities. Then she nodded to Jessica. Would you like to begin? Oh, and she began, confidently, dryly, unemotional. She listed everything from my heart attack to my erratic behavior. Mentioned that I was emotionally unstable, referring to one letter I'd written to my son. Said that Alex had become anxious, that he wakes up at night, that he feels tense around me. I listened, and something crumbled inside. Not because it was true, but because all of this was once home. Now it was an accusation. When it was our turn, Allison stood up and started hard. No introductions. She showed us the certificates, medical reports, psychological evaluations, correspondence, bills, school fees, letters to my son. Every document was a nail. And then she gave me the floor. I hadn't prepared a speech. There was no script, just me and the truth. I'm not perfect. I've been sick. Yes, I've had a heart attack, but not one day have I abdicated my role as a father. Not once did I choose myself over him. I haven't committed a crime. I didn't do any harm. I just found myself alone. And I continue to be. But not because I want to be. It's because they decided for me. The judge took a long look. Then she asked a couple follow-up questions. I answered. Simple. No posturing. Why didn't you challenge your wife's departure right away? Because I believed it wasn't over. Pause, the one where the air rings. And then the decision, joint custody, a schedule of meetings, involvement of the school psychologist. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat. It was a chance. I looked at Jessica, and for the first time, she looked away, because she knew I wasn't the background now. As I walked down the street after the meeting, I felt the ground beneath my feet get a little firmer. I hadn't won, but I had been heard, and that was a step. I got home that evening, and there was a voice on the answering machine. Son, reluctantly, quietly. Dad, can I come over on Saturday? Unless you're busy. I listened to the tape 20 times. Not because I didn't get it. It's because I've been waiting for that sound since the morning I left the hospital. He's here, with a backpack, with books. We ate pizza in silence. Then he asked where his old toys were. I pulled out a box. He smiled. For the first time. For real. We went to bed late that night. He fell asleep on the couch, and I sat next to him. And for the first time, I felt like I was someone again. Not a function, not a problem. Just Dad, and that was enough to move on with my life. The day after the trial, I realized one thing. Nobody gives you your past back, even if you win it in the courtroom. Getting your son back isn't a timetable, it's trust. And trust doesn't grow out of paperwork, it doesn't come out of a signature. I started small. I bought new dishes, real ones, not plastic, a tablecloth for the table, a blanket for the couch. I wasn't trying to recreate family coziness. I was creating a space where my son could just be. No instructions, no pressure, no expectations. On Friday, I went to pick him up myself, stood outside the school. He came out and saw me. He didn't look away. That was a victory. We drove in silence, but there was music in the car, and it was shared. He didn't talk much the whole evening, but he ate with gusto. He watched cartoons. He asked me to keep the light on in the hallway. I didn't ask why. I just left it on. The next morning we went to the park. I bought him ice cream, even though it was chilly. He chose one with chocolate and nuts. He said his mom wouldn't let him have it because he was allergic. I knew he wasn't allergic, just didn't care for sweets in her new life. He laughed, not loud, but real. And I walked beside him and caught myself thinking, being needed was more than being right. I started over, not fast, not pretty, but honest. With every call, with every text, with every visit. I didn't impose. I was there for you, just there. And one day, weeks later, when I was picking him up for the weekend as usual, he threw in, Dad, can I stay with you till morning instead of tonight? I didn't answer. I just gripped the steering wheel tighter so my hands wouldn't shake, because that's when I realized it wasn't all for nothing. I got home when he was asleep. I went into his room. Yes, he had his own room now, with a lamp, books, a dinosaur blanket. I sat and watched him. Like the first day I brought him home from the hospital. Life didn't come back. It just moved on, without some of the baggage, and with a new meaning. A couple weeks later, I received an unexpected letter. Not an email, a paper one, with a hand-signed envelope. Her mother's address on the back. I didn't dare open it for a long time. I sat there twisting it around. Then I opened it. Inside was a short letter. From Jessica. I don't regret leaving, but I underestimated you. I thought you couldn't handle it, that it would break you. I was wrong. I see the way Alex lights up when he comes back from you. And I have a lot to learn from you. J double quote. I didn't know what to feel. This wasn't an apology. It was a confession. Quiet, restrained, without asking me to come back, and maybe that's what made it real. I put the letter in the drawer, didn't burn it, didn't put it in the extra box. It was part of the journey, mine, her, ours together. In the weeks that followed, I continued to live. For the first time, not in waiting, not in suffering, but in process. I started working again. An old friend had started a firm and called me onto the team. Not as a savior, as an equal. I accepted, not for the money, for the feeling of being needed. My life wasn't a fairy tale. No one came back. I didn't win 1 million. But I did win silence. Quiet. My own. One with room for my son, books, evening tea, and most of all, myself. I became the man I wanted to be. Not because things worked out, but because I didn't give up. And if my son ever asked me, "Dad, how did you do it?" My answer's simple. I stayed when others left. In the spring, we went to the country, just the two of us, for the weekend. No plans. I took an old thermos, sandwiches, and a map. Alex sat in the front seat and sang along to the radio. Not loud, but without fear. We walked through the woods. He collected pine cones, built a house out of twigs, and I watched. I didn't interfere. I didn't command. I was just there for him. When he got tired, he sat on my lap and said, "I know you've been sick, but you're the strongest you've ever been." I couldn't answer. My throat constricted. But it wasn't the pain. It was the light, inner light. And that's when I realized the climax wasn't in the courts. Not in letters. It's in phrases like these. This moment. When everything you've been through suddenly makes sense. Because the real victory isn't about bringing back the past. It's about building something new. From the ashes, without illusions, but with heart. I closed my eyes and breathed in the chill. My son slept on my shoulder, and life went on. Slowly, but in the right direction. Now every morning begins not with an alarm, but with 2 simple actions. I brew coffee and text my son. Sometimes he responds. Sometimes he doesn't. But I know he's reading, and he knows I'm there. No strings attached, no judgment, just there. That's the real thing, and when you're just needed, not as a function, but as a person. Sometimes the way to find yourself is not through loud acts, but through small actions repeated day in and day out. I didn't become a different person. I just stopped being the one everyone wrote off, and that's my victory.